Hey everybody, it's Britton here. Welcome to another episode of Conversations With. Today's episode is really near and dear to my heart as I have two absolutely amazing, wonderful friends on. You may know them from a little YouTube channel called Dead Meat and the Dead Meat Podcast. They're absolutely wonderful. Today I have on James H. Anise, Dead Meat James, and Chelsea Rebecca, his fiance. I'm so excited for this. We're going to talk about all the things. Anything that you can think of will be a thing that we have talked about. Things. You know what I mean? Today's episode is going to be great conversations with Dead Meat James and Chelsea Rebecca. Let's get to it.
First off, how are you guys? Because no one asked that enough.
I know. We're good.
We're fine. We're comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, we, our job hasn't been impacted by anything because we work from home. So our life is pretty much unchanged. Yeah.
Yeah. We got Lucy here. She's crawling all over the desk.
Knew that there's a podcast being recorded. So she's right in front of us, but you can't see her.
She said, I'm going to be on the podcast too.
Yeah. She knows. She's a camera hog.
It's such a crazy time. I feel like where there's so much going on. Outside of COVID, there's, protests every day in all the major cities of America. There's an election going on. It's 2020 said, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to make sure they don't forget us like they did 2019, 18, 17. We're just going to go for it.
I saw a tweet yesterday. Someone was like, historians in the future are going to have to pick which parts of 2020 that they specialize in, which is so true. Like,
my favorite was, at least no one will have a hard time remembering the year.
Yeah.
Things happening.
Right. Total. It's a weird year. And as a musician, it's a weird year to be like, oh, well, I'm going to go play out more and do these kind of things. And then now, try
planning to get married.
Yeah.
Right.
We moved it. We're getting married next year now.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be this year?
Yeah.
October.
Yeah, but we'll get married. It'll be fun. Heather's still going to officiate. Heather Langenkamp.
That's amazing.
Still officiating. She confirmed. I got an email back from her. Confirmed. It's on her calendar.
Good.
She's the sweetest. But yeah, we've also been learning. Yeah, I know. We love her. We've also been learning instruments. You're a professional musician. We're like beginner, intermediate level musicians now, which is exciting.
There you go. What have you been learning?
I played bass a tiny bit in high school, but I've been relearning it. And then James is playing drums, so we're just like rhythm section at our apartment.
There you go. Hold it down.
Yeah.
That's the most important part of any band is a good rhythm section.
Dude.
Don't tell that to They Might Be Giants.
I'm trying to find like friends of ours that I like who are really good musicians and like know what they're doing, but also I wouldn't be scared to like play with and jam with. In person, we should jam. You could like, guide us along our musical journey as someone who knows what they're doing. And then we'll go see Fish.
And then we'll go see Fish. Fish. We love Fish. Patrick, who's on here, loves Fish. We started out as Deadheads, huge Deadheads that just followed the Dead around the country. And I hated Fish for so long. I don't know what it was. It's the songs are silly. They're not serious. The lyricism of the Dead isn't there. And I loathed the band until I saw them at Bonnaroo. And seeing them is what converts you.
Yeah.
Sure. I remember stumbling into, I think it was a Uriah Heep tent at Bonnaroo on my own, just being like, yeah.
Totally. Bonnaroo will change your life. I somehow lucked out with Bonnaroo and got an artist pass and didn't have to stand in like that.
Nice.
Oh, that's so cool.
Sweaty crowd. But that's where I saw Fish. And the jam is such a journey. And Trey is so good at knowing how to make it tense. Like I always talk about how he never goes to the note that you think he's going to until like 4.5 minutes after you think he should be there.
Yeah.
And that's when the release happens and you get pelted by 15,000 glow sticks.
Oh, that's so fun.
The glow sticks were they hurt, but they now, how did you guys meet? Let me say how we met, because we met at the It 2 premiere, you and I.
Yeah.
With my cousin Link, who has a tiny show on YouTube.
Yeah. I think I had heard of him or something.
Right. Yeah, he's done all right. But him and Rhett, his childhood best friend, had just written this book that I was like, oh, you're taking a foray into this. That's awesome. Because Link is not the horror guy. Rhett is definitely the horror guy. And I don't think I was fully aware of how into the genre Rhett was until Link was like, and we're writing this book and this is what it's about. Did you guys like the book? You can be honest.
Yeah, we both read it.
No,
yeah.
I will be completely honest. I read it in, I think, 2 days, and which is, it's not a long book, but I'm a slow reader, so that's impressive.
Yeah.
That I read it in 2 days. Just because I couldn't put it down. I really enjoyed it. It's, it's a young adult novel, and we are not young adults anymore, but it was still very enjoyable.
It's a good book, and it goes into great places. But here, I'll let you in on a secret. I wanted them to go further. There's a great scene where they're milking the blood out of this guy at a funeral home. Whatever. And I was like, it's a paragraph. I was like, this should be like an entire chapter. You get gross and nasty.
We talked about that when they came on our show. We talked about that scene a bit, and them having to do the research of like, okay, how much blood is in a human body? How long would which I think is so funny. And then we all committed to, and I'm still committed to, if we are able to ethically consume human together, like as a taste test, we're there on Rhett and Link's show. Ethical cannibalism. I'm so there.
That could be the name of an album.
Ethical cannibalism.
Yes, that's like the offshoot of Cannibal Corpse. Whenever they all start playing with each other, and, they get really old, and it's just the drummer and the lead singer, and they have to start their new band, and it's ethical cannibalism. That's what it is.
Yeah, where one of them is really gets really into activism.
Right. Yeah, and they're like, we can't continue our old ways.
Right.
We have to start over. This has to be ethical. We've been doing this wrong.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Britton, at that premiere, you sent Link and Rhett over to meet with me, to introduce themselves to me. So you had already been familiar with the channel?
Yes. So I got familiar with you guys when I was debating on whether or not to go to Monsterpalooza for my first time. And when I looked up Monsterpalooza on YouTube, it was your video of you going on Monsterpalooza that popped up. And that was my introduction to you.
That was the second video I was
going to say that was a long time ago. Yeah. That was like interviewing people when no one knows who we are at all at those conventions. At this point, we've been to so many that a lot of the horror actors and people at booths there, we kind of know now. So it feels a bit less awkward to interview people.
Yeah, but I got Savini.
Yeah.
First video.
Tom's first big interview for the channel.
Very encouraging, and I'll always remember that.
Yeah.
He very genuinely told me, good luck with the channel, even though it's like, oh, thanks, man. I don't even know how much you understand what a YouTube channel is, but thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Right. He's a great guy. I really like him. I have a lot of friends that have worked with him, and they just talk about just how much he loves it and just how great of a guy would do anything for you. I met him a couple times. I actually just bought a Creepshow 2 poster from Dark Delicacies that's huge. It's 4 feet by 6 feet huge.
Oh my gosh.
And signed by Tom Savini. And we needed something for our living room to go on a wall. And I was like,
yeah. Oh, Dark Delicacies is a cool place. That's on Magnolia. So that's our Horror Row in Burbank, California. Yeah.
I live right off of Magnolia. So I'm
so cool.
Right on this row. Now you guys, conventions, obviously you were going and talking to these people as attendees, and now you guys get invited to be guests and sign and have tables and everything. When did those offers start coming in of you should come and have a table and meet people?
I think we got invited to Scaricon.
Yeah, Scaricon we got invited to by our friend Felissa Rose, who is like an ambassador for that convention. And then so she was like, you guys have to go. It's a small convention in Rochester, New York. And so we had like our first actual table.
And she's someone who, again, I did interviews with her early on when the channel was still really young. And but it wasn't until I think I did the Sleepaway Camp Kill Count, which I just poured my heart and soul into because I love that movie so much. And then she ended up seeing that, and that just really turned her on to us. And just like every time we see her now, it's just hugs and
oh yeah,
yeah, she loves it.
Yeah, love her. And then I think the other kind of big event in terms of our status with convention going is we went to Texas Frightmare last year, and people knew we were going to be there, and we always, you know, if people know we're going to be at a convention or something, we always, if you want to come say hi or meet us, we think you should have a chance to. And so we try to let people know, like, hey, we're going to be here at a certain time, whatever. And so we were like, okay, we'll do like a fan meetup. I think we made like a event for it online, or we just did like a tweet about it. It was like, hey, we're doing a quick fan meetup outside of the patio at the hotel at this time, whatever. And so we're getting ready, and we had some of our moderators from the channel. They all did like a group trip to the convention, which was a lot of fun. That's awesome. Like the B plot of Texas. I just imagine like if it was a movie, like cut to their adventures in Texas.
Yeah, but it's a bunch of like 18 to 21.
Yeah, they driving around in a giant van together. Yeah. So they texted us and they're like, guys, there's so many people here. And I didn't even... I was like, okay, maybe there's a lot of people, but when we walked downstairs, holy shit, there were like at least 100.
Yeah, like lined up, and there's not a lot of space there. It was wrapped around the outside seating for the restaurant.
Yeah, there. And our mods, I'm so happy they were able to. They just started lining people up to keep some semblance of order so that people didn't get crazy. And we were like, all right, we'll just have it be this line to come meet us. And then the convention people and the hotel owners came out and were like, hey, you can't be doing this out here.
Yeah.
And so we talked to the Texas Frightmare people. We're like, hey, we're so like, we had no idea it was going to be like this. We're so sorry. I'm like, I hate being, I was like, I'm going to get yelled at. I'm so scared. I was like, this is a nightmare. I don't want to be yelled at. So we kind of talked through an arrangement, and we got in early to submit for a table application for Texas Frightmare and got approved like right away. So we were like, you know, we'll get an actual table next year. We had no idea. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's amazing though. And you were supposed to be at Monsterpalooza this year, right?
Yeah, and that one we just applied to and got it. You know, I had gotten the press pass, I think, from them the previous years, just applying for that as well, which I think just amounts to a free ticket to go, which is cool. But so they had at least been familiar with the channel. I had sent them the videos that I made of those conventions. So yeah, we also got approved for that. And then that got postponed to, I think it got transferred to Son of Monsterpalooza, which is like a sister convention, which will be in the fall. And then Texas Frightmare was postponed to the fall.
Yeah.
So we're scheduled to be at both of those. We plan on it as long as COVID doesn't like fully come back.
I know that's the thing, is if COVID comes back, I don't want to mess with it.
Yeah, Chelsea has asthma, so we don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
With breathing problems, but
well, I hope it works out, because conventions are so magical. I mean, you meet so many people there, and I mean, the celebrities are cool and meeting your idols are cool, but just being in a room full of people who are like in on the same joke, is really fun.
I know. I miss them so much. And like horror conventions, especially, because even before, you know, like now it's weird being in a place where like doing what we do and having a channel that's as big as it is. There's more, I don't know there's more of a reason for people to be nice. You know, that idea of like, you know, you reach a certain level of success. There's more incentive for people to be nice to you, because you can then, you know, you have something to offer in a way to put it that's really gross, but like I think back to even when we went to conventions before we started the channel, and like when it was a really small channel, it was still just, I was blown away by how friendly everyone was and the atmosphere. Like that it's cool to have kind of a before and after in terms of success to really affirm that, like, no, they're just, horror conventions are such a cool place to be. And like the atmosphere is so friendly and kind. And that wasn't contingent on, us being who we are. If that makes sense.
No, totally. Do you guys have any like, holy crap, I can't believe this is happening moments from conventions?
Oh God.
For me, it's not a convention. For me, the coolest thing we've gotten to do with the channel is the Stanley Hotel
that was
Flanagan
so
thing.
Cool.
That was Warner Brothers reaching out to us and sending us to the Stanley Hotel, which was where Stephen King stayed and was inspired to write The Shining. It's where the miniseries The Shining was filmed. And so we got to stay at that hotel on an all expense paid trip. They even paid us to do this gig, which was great since, we have wedding expenses coming up. But the coolest part of it all was getting to hang out with Mike Flanagan, who is like, we got to do a scavenger hunt with him and make a video just talking to him. He's one of the most down to earth guys to talk to. He's made some of my favorite things of the genre that have come out in recent years, like The Haunting of Hill House. And like, this was a guy who, before this opportunity.
We were so nervous because it's like with someone like that, because I had no idea what he was like. I had never watched like an interview with him or anything. He was so mysterious. I'm just like, this is just the guy who did Hill House and Hush and Gerald's Game, like all these movies that I think are so cool and so dark. And he's who I consider like a prestige kind of horror guy, like, so I'm like, what is this dude going to be like? Because that could go either way, And he's like the most chill dude. And it was so great. We did the scavenger hunt, and the rest of the weekend, like the hotel is pretty small. Like it's not a big building. And so we just kept running into each other. And it was just like hanging out with Mike Flanagan that whole weekend. And his lovely wife, Kate Siegel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been to the Stanley. I have a friend who is named Aidan Sinclair that had a show at the Stanley.
What?
Like a theatrical seance show. And now he's moved from the Stanley. He was there for years. He's moved from the Stanley to the Queen Mary. I think he's back at the Stanley for this summer, I think, just doing theatrical seances.
That's so fun. So is he just like, he just goes to like different haunted places and does stints there? Because that sounds awesome. Yeah. That sounds like a fun job.
I think America's Got Talent and the Penn and Teller show first. And then I think that maybe the Stanley reached out and he was there for a couple years. It was maybe even longer than a couple years. And then now he just has a full-time thing at the Queen Mary. He's been there for a year or two. But it's awesome, and he's great. So I got to get out to the Stanley to see his show at some point when he gets back there.
I miss that hotel so much. Even just beyond the experience we got to do there, just staying in that hotel, there's something about like, because it's not even that isolated. It's so weird. You think of The Shining and you're like, oh, it's really deep in the mountains, but there's a McDonald's like right next to that hotel. Like it's not super duper isolated, but there still is something about the staff that works there and like the history of that building. It feels like everyone there is like really committed to this building and the fantasy of it, and like everyone who gives the ghost tours is so great. It seems like a lot of college kids maybe, or high school kids who run the tours and stuff. It just, the vibe of it, I loved staying there. Like it felt very cozy and nice. But maybe that's just us. A haunted hotel. I'm like, whenever we got there from the airport, I was like, I just had the best nap of my life in this haunted hotel. Like I haven't gotten this good of sleep in so long.
That's how, well, I didn't sleep, but I stayed. Aiden got it set up somehow for me to stay in B340 on Queen Mary, which is like the most haunted room on the boat, Legendary. And I slept like an hour before we had to get up and check out because I was so freaked out. There was like stuff actually happening though. There was like closet doors shutting on their own and like hangers falling off of the.
Ew.
I stole a hanger. I stole the hanger that fell off.
Yeah.
Now I have it in my closet. I won't hang anything on it though. It seems weird. And the Winchester house is surrounded by like Chipotle's and industrial.
Oh, we haven't been there. Too. I want to go there so bad.
It's so beautiful, and you expect it to be like in this like really lush place where nothing is around it because it's a huge house, and it's just surrounded by commercialism and industrialism, but that is America. So what was it about horror for you guys that drew you to the genre?
I mean, I've been watching since I was a kid, so it's hard to say what attracted me to it in the first place. I just assume that it's the same kind of things that appeal to everyone who really gets into horror. I think it's a controlled way to confront fear, a safe way to confront the ideas of death, dying, violence, supernatural stuff, if that's what you believe in. All these things that we wouldn't want to happen to us in real life. But it's so, everyone's lives, you live day to day, and most days are the same. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you do a hobby, you go to sleep. I think that there is something appealing about something that's so out of the ordinary, even if it's something horrific, that it makes you want to watch or it makes you want to learn more about it. I think horror movies are a great way to explore that kind of thing, this tragedy that might befall a normal everyday life, and make it interesting, for lack of a better term. But again, like I said, in a safe way to where it's not actually happening to you or your loved ones. You can watch it happen to people that have corn syrup coming out of their wounds because it's safe and interesting.
Yeah. And I got into it when I was a bit older because I couldn't watch violent movies growing up. They were not allowed in my house. But like getting into high school, I would watch horror movies at sleepovers. But then college, like we both went to film school and we had to take a lot of different theory classes. And the thing with theory classes is often, or like even film history classes, you're watching stuff where it's like, all right, gotta watch this for film school to be a well-rounded film student. But a lot of those films, they're boring. It's watching people like cry over their like dead crops or whatever, just like
Bicycle Thief,
art cinema. But I just remember like learning about horror films in college and taking a horror class and realizing, oh my God, I can, learn just as fulfilling theory and just as dense theory through the lens of like these exploitation films and these like schlocky horror films and gore. And like that, I think, is what I just love. I ended up loving so much about the genre, is like a genre that seems maybe to many people really dumb on its surface, is like, no, there's so much to offer there. It's like, you can have just as intelligent discussions about horror as you can about like a Bergman movie or,
to randomly interject here. I've always said that there's this overlapping circles, this Venn diagram of horror fans, pro wrestling fans, and metal fans. They just always seem to intersect. And for the longest time, I was like, well, I know a lot about horror movies and I know a lot about pro wrestling, but I'm not that into metal. We've been going on kind of like a metal journey this past few weeks.
I've been listening to a lot of metal.
I've been reading Fargo Rock City by Chuck Klosterman and just like delving into metal history. And what you said about horror movies seeming dumb but being really intelligent behind the scenes, I feel like that's actually true to lesser degrees in each of those circles. I think horror is dumb. It seems dumb, but is really smart behind the surface. I think pro wrestling seems dumb, but sometimes can have some kind of intelligence back there, some kind of like, really good storytelling. But then fucking metal you get to, and it seems dumb, and it's mostly dumb. Like, I'm enjoying this metal sojourner that we're taking, but like, I think those guys will be the first to say, no, it's meant to be dumb.
Yeah,
it's like, there's not hidden meaning behind here. So I don't know, random thought that came to me.
No, I agree. They do seem to intersect. And that's why, conventions, when I started going there and seeing all the people that don't look like me, they have their tattoos and their mohawks and they're all in black and everything. I was like, I am so different from these people, but I'm not. Like, the suits are the same people that will go hardcore over, Lloyd Kaufman movies, just like the people who dress the part, and they are smart movies. They're very smart. I mean, you look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was made for nothing, and it's just a commentary on America in the time of Vietnam and all these lies that we were fed with Watergate and just what was happening overseas. And it's a look at rural America during that time. It's a really smart movie. And it continues into the second movie where, while I don't think is maybe as intentional, but you have Chop Top, who's a Vietnam veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's his character is a total examination of the trauma that these people had to deal with after they got sent over there. And, it's a dumb character. He's like, nom land, and, lick my plate, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm talking to Bill on Monday, actually.
Oh my God. I
awesome.
love Bill. We're like Twitter friends now, I think.
Great.
Yeah, he's so sweet. Yeah. Oh, love Chop Top.
I hear so much about Bill from just other friends of mine that are on the circuit, but they're smart movies, and I think people, tend to throw that under the radar, and I don't know for what reason. Maybe because it's not. I mean, it's still kind of unacceptable to want to be entertained by people that are, getting slashed to pieces or ghosts or whatever. It's still seen as a little trivial, but I think that underneath all of that, a lot of these movies are smarter than some of the movies that we consider smart. The way they lace that stuff in is pretty impressive.
I think part of it, I wonder, is I think maybe now we as humans like to think that we've evolved beyond finding violence entertaining or finding gore entertaining. You think back to that's something that would entertain people, back in the Roman Empire, these savages, they would bring people, throw people into the lion pit in the Colosseum and watch men rip each other apart. It's we've moved beyond that. We've figured out more enlightened ways of entertaining ourselves. But no, we're still, the same kind of weird animal brain is going to be. It's such a bizarre phenomenon that no, we're all still kind of entertained by that. I think it's just the difference in are you going to let yourself be entertained by that, or is there something holding you back and thinking no, this is wrong. We should be evolved beyond this by now. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, I completely agree. Do you remember the first time a movie scared you?
The first time, I was scared of everything as a kid, not even horror movies. We were just listening to a podcast about Tipper Gore's book about metal and how metal is corrupting the kids, and she there's a passage in there where she talks about how her daughter was scared by a Tom Petty music video. I forget what song.
Jesus, Tom Petty is
I know.
I adore Tom Petty. He changed my life. He taught me what it was like to be cool. I cried myself to sleep the night he died.
Yeah,
but he's the most vanilla kind of
Yeah.
To be fair, the music video sounded pretty fucking
It was
cool.
it was a girl dressed as Alice in Wonderland, and she changes.
Getting carved up like a cake.
Yes, yep. She turns into a cake and gets sliced up. Don't come around here no more.
Okay,
and
that sounds cool.
That reminded me that when I was a kid, I think maybe this is some of the first actually disturbing imagery that stuck stuck to my brain and just lived there for the rest of my life was late at night one night I saw the music video for Another Brick in the Wall. So it's just the part from the movie The Wall where it is a bunch of students on a conveyor belt and they all get pushed into this meat grinder and they get ground up and they all have these scary masks on and stuff. And that for years I didn't know what it was from because I was a kid and we didn't have internet, so I couldn't just look up what that was. So it just was this weird mystery for years. And then I finally realized when I was a bit older that it was this Pink Floyd song. But oh my God, that scared me so much as a kid.
I remember the beginning of Scream scaring the shit out of me. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and my parents had rented it and were playing it in the living room, and just couldn't make it past that opening scene. I ran away into the kitchen and just hid.
That scene is so scary.
So good.
It's terrifying, and it's great at diverting expectations of you think that Drew Barrymore is going to last for the whole movie, and then you get her for 5 minutes, and it's oh. Now that's it.
Especially for audiences back then, because now we kind of, it's one of those things that's just taken for granted. Everyone watching that movie now pretty much knows that even if they don't know Drew Barrymore is going to get killed, they know oh, isn't Neve Campbell the star of this? But back then, I think the advertising campaign centered around Drew Barrymore. She was front and focal on all the posters and everything. So yeah, it was a nice bait and switch there.
Totally. My first, I'll never forget this. I had to be 5 years old, and my dad was watching Jaws, and it wasn't the shark that scared me.
I know it is.
I can still remember I was peeping around the corner of our hallway that kind of jutted out, and my dad was in the living room, And if I close my eyes, I can still see, the sunlight coming through the blinds. Like, it's so vivid for me.
Yeah.
So, and just, it's when Brody and Hooper have to go check out the abandoned boat, and Hooper
Yep, I do.
And the body floats into frame, and the score just swells, and it's like that scared me.
That's scary.
So good.
I watched that recently, and Jaws was one of those ones where it was like such a vague, like, past memory, to the point where I was like, have I only seen this on TV? Like, it just had been so long. And so I rewatched it like last year, and that scared the shit. I had no idea that was coming. It's so scary.
It's amazing. And I wish that, I wish they took as good of care as that franchise as they did with the sequel. And then they did the third movie, and it's like, what was even the point of this?
I try to remember what because the sequel is that SeaWorld?
No, sequel is Friends on a Boat. It's just teens on a boat.
Why the hell don't I remember
just teens on a boat?
Sequel is just teens on a boat. It's basically the first movie again, because like you have
that's why I barely remember it. I remember watching that, and I was like, this is just the first movie.
It's the electrical cable is what they use in the second one. Third one is SeaWorld.
Yes.
Fourth one is Michael Caine in the Bahamas.
Yes, that one's also hilarious. The third one's like Sea Lab, right?
Yeah, third one is
Sea Lab 2021. Sure. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that fourth one is just Michael Caine, like, screwing that guy's mom.
Terrible.
Yeah, I love them.
That's what the plot is. That's the plot. That's the, you pull it up on Amazon Prime to rent it. That's what it says.
It pretty much just the main. Dude, that whole movie is just this poor man being like, okay, Michael Caine, like, I know you're fucking my mom. Please stop.
It's bad. Like, it's not. It's
one of the worst movies.
It's really bad. Technically a Christmas movie, I'll also say. Doesn't that take place at Christmas?
It opens in Christmas.
There you go.
I didn't realize about Jaws 3 until I watched your kill count for it, that they just didn't care. There's like half of the shots are out of focus. And my thing that I didn't notice until you mentioned it was, you can see the water splashing against the backdrop of the tank.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, why not just take good care and make sure that you don't see the wall of your tank and water just splashing against the back of it?
Oh, man.
That's right. Oh, God. It's like the Truman Show, you know? It's like the sky has an edge to it.
I think it was filmed in the same.
Yeah, at Universal, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's something else. I did love it when I was a kid, and then didn't realize that I hated it until like a year ago when I watched it, and I was like, this is definitely not what 8-year-old Britton thought it was.
You know what, man? Give it a few more years. I think you'll come back around to loving it.
That's what's going to happen. I'm going to be Jaws 3. I'm going to be picketing outside of, re-releases of all the new Jaws movies. Screenings in LA. I'm going to say show Jaws 3. That's going to be.
It's what happens when you like. Every time there's a movie that I think is terrible that I like ironically, because I'm like, oh, this is so bad, but I love it because it sucks. I end up actually just becoming a very big fan of whatever that is.
Yeah.
So that'll happen.
That's why I'm a diehard The Rage Carry 2 fan now.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh God, that movie. But so the genre was big for us. And then what was your transition from, okay, I don't want to just be a fan, but I want to be a creator also inside of the genre? Like, what was your push to start the channel?
Yeah, well, I was most into horror movies as a kid, probably from like age, 10 to 13. And then my interests shifted over to gaming, specifically computer gaming. And then as I got older and into college, my interest shifted over into partying and getting drunk. Don't recommend that as a personality-defining hobby. Don't do that. That's a waste of time. During college, I dated someone who was not into horror movies, so they were definitely in the back burner, just pretty much ignored. And then I think after that and after college, I started to get back into them just a tiny bit. I would casually check out ones I had heard of, getting with Chelsea.
Yeah, we would
college.
watch horror movies together.
Yeah, I mean, the first movie we ever watched together was Hellraiser, which is hilarious. But like we saw It Follows when it came out. When we heard that there was a good horror movie, we would watch it.
Yeah.
But we, it wasn't our lives. And it wasn't until we had Practical Folks, which is another YouTube channel that we started in. I mean, the roots of it go back to like 2012, but we were really doing it in like 2013. It was sketch comedy. It was our Drunk Disney series, which was commentating on movies while getting drunk. Again, don't recommend that as a crux to your creative outlet. But the channel, it had a good loyal fan base, but it definitely plateaued around 60,000 subscribers. I think it wouldn't grow. And I think part of that was just the consistency of our releases. We were putting out one video a month of the Drunk Disney series, which is not frequent enough to grow an audience on YouTube. And the reason we couldn't really do more, besides the fact that it's centered around getting drunk, and you don't want to do that too often, was because we were a group of 4 to, at times, I think we got up to like 8 or 10. Yeah. We really expanded it and then contracted it again. We were just trying to figure out how to best maneuver that channel. And, it's not controversial among anyone who was in that group for me to say I was doing most of the work because I was the editor who would edit the Drunk Disneys.
Yeah.
So we were a group of people doing this channel, but most of the work was on my shoulders. And, it was a lot of all-nighters and such. And so eventually, after it plateaued and after, we still had to go through everything as a group to make decisions, I figured, I want to try a YouTube channel that I'm solely in charge of, that I just have my say and I can do whatever I want. I don't have to take it to committee and I can just do whatever. And I decided, okay, what should I make that channel about? What do I know a lot about? And I remember I was debating whether doing a exercise channel where like I would do workouts for people, some kind of political like news of the day, almost like a Philip DeFranco type thing. Which is still kind of like a long-term goal of mine to one day be that kind of commentator. But the other thing that I considered was horror movies, because I just had such a vast knowledge from when I was a kid, even though it was kind of an idle interest the previous 10 or so years. So that's what I landed on. And
I'm so glad that's what you landed on, by the way. Just talking about the other options.
You want me to be a fitness YouTuber?
I feel like fitness YouTube and like fitness internet, like that sphere of the internet is nuts. Like it's like makeup YouTube where like everyone hates each other for some reason.
Yeah. And the other one is a quick way to get hated by people if you do it wrong.
Yeah. I feel like being a politics commentator, like being a pundit is like my nightmare job.
Yeah.
Like being that's the worst. Like I just feel like pundits I have my own issues with. I'm like, I don't know. Like, go actually do something instead of just talking about what other people do. You know?
For the longest time, The Daily Show was like my dream job.
Well, yeah, because The Daily Show, when we were in like high school, like The Daily Show and Colbert Report, when we were in high school, I don't know anyone who is at our age who like wasn't extremely influenced by those shows, because those were like, they had an edge to them. Those were
for sure.
Like,
but but even now, like now at this point, and this is getting totally off topic, I wouldn't want to even make a Daily Show with Jon Stewart version just because A, it's been done before, but B, he always had that defense of like, I'm just making jokes when he got called out on stuff. And like,
sure.
I love Jon Stewart, but that was definitely kind of a cop out.
Yeah.
You can take me seriously when you want to, but not with, I'm just making jokes. Anyway, I am also glad that I picked horror because, like we've said, the community is great. And so I started with Friday the 13th just because I knew it was the biggest series, both in terms of popularity and the number of films. And I knew that having done Practical Folks for so long, I knew, okay, I want to make weekly releases. So I should probably build up a backlog of episodes before I start releasing them so that I can stay on top of it. So I made that decision in November of 2016 that I would make this channel. First video didn't come out until April of 2017. So that was almost 6 months of me watching those movies, writing those scripts, figuring out the graphics, the look.
Yeah, like what the channel even is. Yeah.
So like I put a lot. I think I landed on the name Dead Meat in January.
Do you remember what other name ideas were?
Yeah, I dug up the Facebook post where I was like, hey guys, I'm thinking about doing a horror movie channel. Which of these names sound good? And they were all awful except for Dead Meat. It was like Running in the Woods was one, which was stupid. That's the only one I really remember.
I really want to find those.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to go watch Running in the Woods. Like, that's so dumb.
Yeah.
Like, Dead Meat got really lucky that the name was so good, and that was taken from Friday the 13th Part 6, those kids talking to each other. I remember because had watched those movies and written those scripts, and I was like, that's a good line. Maybe Dead Meat would work. And I also just got really lucky in that as I released those Friday the 13th episodes, the Friday the 13th game came out. And so people were playing that game and then looking up clips from the movie and finding my videos. And so if that hadn't happened, we might not be sitting here talking to you, because it was just so serendipitous that they just coalesced at the same time and brought in an audience who then liked the videos enough, which probably they looked so good. I remember there's always comments on those that first video. Even now, I'll see comments being posted. Wow, I can't believe this looks so good for your first video on YouTube. That's because it was my first video on YouTube. We had done Practical Folks for 4 years.
Right.
So between all that experience in how a YouTube video should look and then the serendipitous coincidence of the game coming out, those are the things that really combine to just make that channel take off so much, man. Like, it was the 10th video that came out that we were already getting higher numbers than Practical Folks. So that was just 2 months in. It was like, oh, this is different. And then I think 4 months in, I was looking at it and like, oh, this could actually be my job maybe. And then 6 or 7 months in was when I left my other job and was able to do it full time.
That's amazing. That's really, really quick. I mean, you look at that in Lincoln, they've been doing this for over 10 years. And, they have 16.5 million subscribers, but, 10 years is a really long time. And obviously they weren't always at 16 million subscribers. And they just were like, we're going to go in and we're going to do it, and we're going to do it every day. And we're going to, they came along right when it was starting too, which is why I think that they got particularly lucky. They're kind of like the OG YouTube celebrities. And they're one of the few that are still around. I mean, like, Tazon Day, Chocolate Rain. I haven't seen him do anything in a really long time.
Pops
I
up. I
have seen him in City Walk in.
Nice!
Eating.
I run into him every now and then.
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But in terms of like actual content that is still being put out every single day, and they're still innovating. I mean, they're one of the last few people from like that era of celebrities that are still doing what they're doing and have huge numbers. And still together.
Yeah. It helps too that their content is, I feel like it's all aged really well. They're not like, you don't look back on their older stuff and be like, oof. There's no way that these people would have been popular now, because I feel like their content was never like mean or, purposely trolly or whatever. It just was very genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Now, as the longer you do the channel, do you find your love for the genre increasing, or do you sometimes like, I have to put all of this away?
I guess like a little bit of like, I have such a deep appreciation and love for it. Like, it's so part of my life now, and it always will be. But it's, that's the trade-off when you're doing something for your job that begins as an interest of yours or a hobby. It's like you then make that thing work, and it doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's something that you love so much, when you make that thing work, it can be, you'll need a break from it every once. Like I'm not the type of person who I don't watch exclusively horror. That's not like my whole life. It's something like it's something I love and is like one of the biggest parts of my life. But I do, every once in a while, I need to be like, I need to watch something that's not a horror movie, because it does, when I'm watching a horror movie, I'm a much more active viewer, because I'm more actively taking notes and like kind of, analyzing the entire time, because I'm in like work mode. But, I put on like a comedy or like a period piece, and I'm like, this has nothing to do with work, so I can kind of turn my brain off for a little bit.
Yeah, as people who, commentate on media, it's interesting that a lot of the media we consume then becomes, even when it's not something specifically that we're covering in a video or a podcast, it still is, if it's a horror movie, kind of work because like you have to consume that information in a way that you remember it, that you can compare it to other things later. And for me, honestly, with the kill count scripts, I pride myself on trying to have like a vast array of references to things and mentioning other things just from all of pop culture. And that's really increased over the 3 years that I've been doing this now. That wasn't the case when I started off, but nowadays I like to think of kill counts as a way to situate horror movies in popular culture at large and like the broader cultural conversation going on. So to that end, pretty much everything I consume, I'm trying to both remember and just keep somewhere in my brain in case I want to reference it later. But because of the same reason, I do have to make sure that I'm not just watching horror movies. I have to make sure that I'm a well-rounded individual because sometimes I want to make references to movies, or sometimes I'll find an interesting connection that an actor has in a horror movie that I'm covering to like a music thing, or just to go back to pro wrestling. When I Know What You Did Last Summer, turns out Freddie Prinze Jr. wrote for the WWE for a while.
So
and so like, wow. I find that super interesting. And I think some of my audience does as well. So I like to be able to pull from all over pop culture to reference in my job. And just as a person, I like to be well-rounded. Like we were talking before we started recording, how we're both spending a lot of time right now learning instruments, Chelsea with bass guitar and me with drums. And yeah, like that's a nice break away from horror movies, is to just do something completely unrelated. That being said, I am always down to watch a horror movie.
Yeah,
and when it's like, oh, we have 2 hours, we can watch a movie. My first instinct is, what about this horror movie that we haven't seen yet?
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes we can do that. Other times, like, no, let's try something a little different.
Yeah.
Just so we don't fall into that rut.
And like a big part too of, I think, being a like well-rounded horror commentator, or like having a really deep, thorough understanding of horror, is like, because horror is so inextricably linked to what we're all kind of collectively afraid of culture-wise. Like whenever, a movie's released, like we look at like, and that's why we, horror is so interesting and why so many of us love it, is because it is such a reflection of the era it came out in. It's harder to be a I think effective analyst of horror if you are only watching horror or consuming it, because you're then losing a lot of the context of whatever era stuff is coming out in. It's like having a broader understanding of like culture at large and history and whatever else is going on at the time something is released. You're going to have then a deeper understanding of whatever horror it is that you're watching. I think makes it more interesting.
Totally. I agree with everything. This is my outlet for being a musician. When you're in the studio all day and you're just hearing the same thing, same 3.5 minutes over and over and over and over again for like 8 hours. Mm-hmm. It's like you want to go home and you never want to hear another song again, because you're like, I cannot deal with that sound. And for me, 'cause I'm doing that all the time. I'm in the studio all the time, or I'm writing with somebody all the time. So this quarantine has been, for me, a way to, veer into these other things that I love, like horror movies and talking to people. So it's been nice, and I totally get, like diving into other avenues is, I think, of creativity is very important for creative people. Now, here's something, last question. Because you guys are you guys have a rigorous schedule, a rigorous output. You guys have, the podcast, kill count. You're insanely busy. Yet you still make time to interact with fans, whether it be on Twitter or whatever platform you go through to interacting fans. It has to be stressful. So what is it that keeps you? What is it that makes the stress worthwhile for you?
I mean, it's just like the payoff of it is so amazing. I mean, the fact that I get to work from home is great. I love working from home. It's the best. And like we get to work with each other, which is amazing. I don't know. I just like the like response we get from people is so overwhelmingly positive that it makes it so worth it. Like I was really nervous at first coming on to do the podcast, because like at that point Dead Meat was already such an established channel, and I was like, oh man, everyone's just gonna think that I'm like all right, he's just letting his girlfriend have a show on here. Cool. But I don't think I've gotten like next to no like mean feedback. Negative feedback is one thing. There's been plenty of times I've gotten emails where it's like, hey, here's something that you could do better. Here's, and like, that's all fair. But like, people being straight up mean is such a rare occurrence. Like, we've gotten so lucky with the audience that we have. And so I think that, I'm not like stressed out logging into Twitter every day. I'm like, I'm never like, oh God, what are my mentions going to be today? It's always like people who I'm really excited to talk to and are really excited to talk to me. I think that's what makes it, like so worth it. It's just like keeping up this really cool circle of people that we've built.
Yeah, the fan base is incredible. Every Friday when a kill count comes out, I'll spend my first 2 hours of the day when I first wake up lying in bed reading comments. I still, when the channel started, for the first year or two, I read every single comment posted on every video just because I'm addicted to feedback. And now it's at a point where that's impossible. That's all I would do all day because of the number of comments I get. But I still try to read as many as I can because I like to know what people think and say. And it's always 90% or more positive. So that's a good motivation. Also, I'm just weird. I always have to be doing something.
He's a workaholic. He's such a workaholic.
Yeah, it's impossible for me to just do something just for the sake of enjoyment. Like you're not aware of this, but I did reach out to our friends, the Gressels, seeing if they might be interested in doing a 4-person podcast going through Lost again. And
oh my God.
Erica, who is not a public person, because James Gressel, our friend, was in Practical Folks. He runs D&D, the Dungeons and Dragons podcast that we're a part of. But his wife, Erica, is not a public person. And so she was like, can't we just watch Lost and not make it a thing? And I was like, Erica, no, you know this about me. I
productive, cannot. Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm
got
always that Protestant work ethic. You're not even Protestant.
So I'm not even. Yeah, I was never Protestant, but I just always have to be making something. And I think the positive affirmation of that work has just only made it worse for me. Because for 4 years I was putting just as much work into Practical Folks and getting lesser returns than I wanted. But in the past 3 years, I've seen what happens when that work gets validated and results in a bigger audience. And I also really believe in, like, I end every video saying be good people, and it's something I really believe in, and it's what I want for the world. I just want people to be better. And I know that right now all I do is talk about horror movies, and that might not seem significant in that context. But I like to think that the way I talk about these horror movies is in a positive and, as we said, kind of nuanced way, where even when I'm talking about a movie I don't like, I can say, oh, but this other thing is good. And I'd like to think that that kind of sensibility bleeds out into at least a portion of my audience, to where it gets them to stop thinking in terms of black and white and gets them to thinking more optimistically, positively. And I hope that they really take to heart, be good people. And, like I said, one day I'd like to transition into a more like actively political realm. I'm hoping to one day run for office. That's always been a hope of mine far down the line. But in the meantime, I do hope that I'm just like helping people see that they can be better people and just be nicer to people. And yeah, that keeps me going.
Totally. Well, I think it's pretty amazing. I watch a ton. It's been a source of entertainment for many a late night at, I was quarantined with two of my best friends for a little bit because my roommate had to fly back to North Carolina for 2 months. And we would always watch whatever movie. And then if there was a kill count, we would watch it right after.
That's the way to do it.
Caroline Williams, who's a friend of mine, we watched the Leprechaun 3 kill count with her. And she thought it was the funniest thing, and she was like, I'm gonna go home and show this to my son Joey.
That's so funny.
And so that's always fun to get to do with people as well. So I thank you for that. Thank you for coming on and talking to me. I really appreciate it more than you guys know. We have to get together and start our trio.
Oh yes.
and it'll be fun. So you guys stay safe and healthy, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
Bye.